Hi friends, we're back again with a little bookish wrap up, just a chill little video for you to put on in the background or perhaps to just grab a beverage and chillax with me as I talk about the books I've read, the books I'm currently reading, and what I might read next, but probably won't because I cannot be contained. So let's just get into it. This is just gonna be a little chitty chat video. So I finished, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 books in August in no particular order. We have The 2000s Made Me Gay by Grace Perry. This is essays on like pop culture and kind of what they said or didn't say about identity, sexual identity, things like that. So you have the author who grew up in that time period, who now identifies as a lesbian, but is looking back at a lot of these hit TV shows and cultural touchstones that either explicitly or indirectly kind of formed her opinion of what it meant to be gay or lesbian or whatever. So this was an interesting read and I did enjoy it. I will say maybe 2/3 of the way through it kind of felt not repetitive, but I felt like I wasn't getting as much additional value from each essay. And so I wonder, yeah, because they kind of hit a similar note, I guess. So I would have wanted it to be a touch shorter and it's not a long book, so a touch shorter, or I wish the essays would have gone just a little bit from a different angle. I don't know, but good read. I recommend it if you're interested in that like sociological, part memoir, part cultural reflection. Then I say I finished it, but I really skimmed A Rogue of One's Own by Evie Dunmore. Earlier this year, I read what is technically, I guess, the 4th book in this series of hers, but they're romance, like historical romance books where it's like about 4 friends, so you can kind of get away with reading whichever book you want out of order. And I just wasn't as compelled by the main character or her love interest in this one. Not that it was bad, and there were some elements where it's like, okay, cool, like the main character's a virgin, and just kind of being a little bit more realistic about a first sexual experience for someone who hasn't had it, that's a woman. But yeah, I just kind of got to the sexy bits and the banter because I just didn't care about anything else, but that's just me. Then I read the graphic novel Cheryl by Gillian Fleck. I remember thinking it was decent. I liked it. It does get a little weird towards the end. And if you're not a fan of like weird and or slightly sexual out of nowhere stuff, then this probably isn't for you. It's a little bit, I think it's about sexuality. See, I don't even remember that much about it, which I don't know if that says more about me or the book, but yeah, just kind of this person trying to figure themselves out and just not really connecting with themselves or other people and stuff like that. So it's good, but wasn't in love with it. The fact that I've already kind of forgotten might be revealing. The Joy of Quitting by Keller Roberts. I really like this. I now am a part of like a library network that has a lot of great graphic novels, so I pick a ton up without knowing much about them. It was delightful. I loved it. It was so funny. I don't have children, but I was cracking up and really enjoyed these like mundane little moments of being a parent, being married, interactions with her kid, interactions with her husband, being an artist, and dealing with mental health stuff. So really good. If I enjoyed it, I can only imagine how much someone who actually has had those experiences would really resonate with this. Then I read War Olympus Volume 6 by Rachel Smith, but then I just read the rest of the series on Webtoon. Oh, you guys, I wasn't expecting the ending to be so emotional for me and on like multiple levels, and it just does such a good job with the whole cast. And so like, not only was I invested in like the main character and her love interest, is a Hades Persephone retelling if you guys aren't aware, but like there was other characters I'm like, oh, And it was like so human and so well-rounded and three-dimensional people, really, even though they're gods and demigods. Ah, stellar. Made me cry a little bit. It's just, oh, so good. And it felt like a very empowering message without being very preachy, which, good job. That's a hard line. And too often nowadays I see literature where it's like, ooh, buddy, I even believe in this stance, and I think this is a bit much. We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. So this is one back in the day I always meant to read and I just never got around to. It was a really interesting experience for me to read it. I think it's a really good book. If you have been watching this channel for a while, you might know I'm not big into mysteries. I just don't care. I'm just so lazy. And like, not that books can't have a mystery element to it, but if like the primary driver of like, why would a reader read this is the mystery, being curious, figuring it out, no thank you. The writing was really cool and interesting in this, and something that I think elevates it to being something beyond just young adult, because the voice is so specific and crisp and detailed, and it's a very poetic but not purplish prosy. It just hits on such a like emotional resonance level because it's able to do things and say things that'd be hard if it was just straight up telling you, if that makes sense. And just like, yeah, like just certain like words or phrases that just are like, that would hook me, that would just be like, ooh, that's an interesting image. Ooh, that's an interesting concept. And you have a teenage main character who doesn't have all of her memories, and so she's trying to figure things out. Now, I think the mystery was pretty interesting and pretty well done. I think there was a little hiccup for me from that transition from like, it's a mystery to like, oh, it's revealed what happens. I wasn't in love with that progression. I don't think it was as smooth or like made as much sense as I would want, but super powerful, super sad, so be ready. Because I am a lazy girly, I wasn't trying to figure it out, so I was pretty devastated by the reality of what happens. Also, don't read this if you've been drinking, because I did. It fucking wrecked me. So you've been warned. I probably would have been perfectly fine. I mean, I'd probably still be sad because I'm a Pisces. I'm a crybaby. But this is not a book to be drinking to. Anyway, I finished Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. Good book, but I feel like there was an essay or two that could probably have been cut out. I was starting to flag a little bit towards the end. Now, I think part of that might be these essays, while they do work well together, they don't have the pacing of something or the connective tissue to make it something that you want to read all together, if that makes sense. So I think I would have enjoyed this experience more if it was just like, I read an essay, set it down, and then whenever I'm feeling the mood for another essay, I pick it back up and read it. It's almost, I think, 400 pages, and I don't know. I was kind of ready to move on after 300 pages. So that might just be me personally. And yet, essays are always interesting as far as pacing is concerned. She has a really descriptive style of writing, which I think is beautiful and does work, but it does add to a slower pacing. I think that also impacts the experience if you're trying to read it from front to back. So something to keep in mind maybe. And then lastly, I won't go too much into this one, but The Dangers of Smoking in Bed by Marina Enriquez. This is a short story collection translated from the Spanish. It's like urban realism meets grotesque horror with the backdrop of Argentina. This is going to be a book club read, so stay tuned. I was a little bummed because I liked her other collection so much better. I felt like with the bulk of the stories in this collection, it was almost there. It was almost saying something, and then it ended a little too early. It didn't quite get there. And so I didn't get the payoff. Like, she is a little bit more just gross and a little grotesque in this one. But we didn't get that reward at the end of theme and revelation and subject matter to warrant that, in my opinion. There was one story I really liked and another story that I thought was interesting. That's the risk you take with a short story collection. Things tend to be more hit or miss. And this one was just a bit more miss for me. I DNF'd one book, which means I didn't finish it. It's called Vampire Tapestry by Susie McKee Carnes. Me and names. Anyway, it's not a bad book. I didn't hate it. And it's broken up into parts. And I liked part 1. But then part 2 just became a very different book than what I kind of signed up for. And I read for another like 30 pages and it just didn't have the elements I was really looking forward to that part 1 had. So I just was like, not for me. It was an interesting take on vampirism. And like, it was a fun setting of like this small college and, you know, college town. And the vampire was a professor. I'm not giving anything away. This is all revealed either in the summary or very quickly in. And then we have like this middle-aged woman who is originally from South Africa, and she was a professor's wife, but then when he died, she became like a maid janitor situation at the college. And so already really fascinating. Like, it's a different setting than I've seen for a lot of vampire novels. A very intriguingly different main character from her background to like where she is now. Like, you don't see a whole lot of middle-aged women. Someone with the take of having been from South Africa and like been hunting. And she had an interesting, flawed perspective, which I think a lot of people could dislike, but I was curious to see where it went. She was a bit biased, she was a bit racist at times. But again, like the fact of going there, of having a flawed protagonist, I found really intriguing. And she's very proactive and smart, and she gets into a conflict with a vampire pretty quick on for a vampire novel. But then in part 2, the vampire loses all his agency. He's just like stuck in a cage. Who I thought was the protagonist is nowhere to be found. She's just gone. And she's replaced with a bunch of characters I just didn't care a lot for. So it is what it is. I enjoyed part 1 and then I bounced. What can you do? So now time for my currently reading, you guys. Per usual, I'm reading too many things, but that's fine. That's fine. First, we have Fault Lines by Emily Atami. This is, I believe, her debut book. Really interesting. I'm really enjoying it. And again, on paper, I wouldn't think this would be a book for me. I feel like that means I'm getting old because we have this Japanese housewife living in Tokyo. She's got a husband and 2 children, and she's just kind of lost herself in this life of being a stay-at-home mom and wife. And, you know, she dropped her dreams of what she thought her future and her career would be. She's not happy in her relationship anymore. And then she meets a dude and it kind of reignites her like joy for life and curiosity and play and learning new things. And so I really love the voice in it. It's really interesting. I love the humor. I love the small references to different things, whether it's music or Studio Ghibli, but it's done in such a way that even if you don't know what those are, it doesn't subtract from your enjoyment. Like, it's not a requirement to know them, but as a person who did, it was kind of fun to be like, oh, she doesn't shy away from the hard topics. I really like it. I hope I continue to like it all the way through. And it's also a casual style of narration that I enjoy, where it's almost like she's talking to you. Chapter 2 goes and starts with, maybe this was when it began. On the Tuesday night when I was thinking of jumping off the balcony, well, Tatsuya checked work emails on his phone. And I don't know, that almost flippant response to wanting to end their life, I just found really intriguing and made me want to read and understand more. So there we go. Then I'm reading a nonfiction book called Sensitive: The Hidden Power of the Highly Sensitive Person in a Loud, Fast, Too Much World by Jen Greinemann and Andre Solo. This was displayed at my library and I'm like, oh, okay, I've heard a lot of things about HSPs, highly sensitive people. I'm curious what the science actually has to say on it. And if there's any takeaways, like any advice or tips to like make life easier. I do think there's more people running around saying they're HSP and using it as an excuse for things. But I do think it's real and I do think there are people who have it. I've read some interesting tidbits, but I'm still pretty early on in the book. So I'm hoping when it comes to the tips element, I'll have something to be able to implement in my life. So we'll see. Then I'm doing a reread because I want to take notes of Seek You, A Journey Through American Loneliness by Kristen Radke. So poignant, stellar blend of science and history and psychology, and just really laying out the groundwork in like a really potent way of how did we get here globally, but also as Americans in this like modern epidemic of loneliness and what it does to us individually, what it does to us as a society, and just, yeah, it's oof. So yeah, I want to be able to quote it and I wanted to jot down some notes this time. So I'm about halfway through that, if you can see my little. And then lastly, I'm still reading My Fat Boy Moby Dick by Herman Melville. I am just taking my good old time, so who knows when I'll finish this. I'm just, yeah, trucking along a couple pages at a time. I'm in a relatively long chapter where my boy Herman was like, I did a lot of research on whales. Like, I spent a whole day at the library, so now I'm gonna write a chapter telling you all the sciencey bits about whales so that this my time didn't go to waste. And I'm like, okay, Herman, all right, I'll allow it if you get back to the plot after this chapter. And then I don't do much of a to-read list, but I do have one that I'm hoping to get to because A, I checked it out from the library, and B, I'm hoping it'll help me with my vampire novel. So that is A Killer by Design, Murderers, Mind Hunters, and My Quest to Decipher the Criminal Mind by Anne Wilbert Burgess and Stephen Matthew Constantine. My girl Anne apparently helped the special behavioral science unit of the FBI and actually worked on a lot of famous cases, including the BTK killer, and apparently there was the Taco Bell Strangler, which I am so mad I haven't heard of before, but I'm glad I will be learning about it because that's insane. And yeah, so I'm excited both because it seems like interesting topic material and hopefully it will also help me with my vampire novel that I'm desperate to write and finish. All right, there you have it. I'd love to know what you read in August, what you're currently reading. I hope you have a calm and lovely September, as much as that is possible in this current world, and keep reading. You got this. Bye.